A consumer statement is actually a statement about what your current standpoint is, whether it's you don't have a job, whether you do still have your job and the time that you normally working is limited. It's pretty much just allowing your lender on your actual credit report to know exactly how you've been affected by whatever's going on. It doesn't always have to be a pandemic with such as what we're dealing with now. It could be anything. As long as you're being upfront, transparent, they have something to base everything off of versus just them just putting derogatory accounts on your credit file.
You are now listening to the Growth Goal Podcast. Here is your host, Alicia Kinchlow.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Growth Goal Podcast. This is a very special pop-up episode where we're going to focus on something very specific to our business owners. So I'm your host, Alicia Kinchlow, and with me I have Kareem McMurrin of Bar Financials. Kareem, welcome to the Growth Goal Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're recording this episode on May 5th. It'll probably drop within the next couple of days. And the reason why I give the date is because right now we're dealing with unprecedented times. We're in the midst of most of the United States being in some type or some form of quarantine where businesses are restrained from opening or some types of businesses are prevented from opening or operating at a full capacity. A lot of schools have been closed. There's social distancing going on. So there are a lot of things that we wouldn't normally have dealt with that are having an impact, not on just the way that we interact with each other, but are definitely having an impact on us financially. And with this comes the effect on small business owners and entrepreneurs, as well as personal finances. So I wanted to bring on someone to the show to kind of talk a little bit around that, but with specific focus on credit. Okay. So again, Kareem, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your business?
Okay. My name is Kareem McMurrin, and I'm from Elizabeth City, which is a small town in North Carolina with a population about less. I was about to say about 40,000, way less than 40,000. It's a small, close-knit community that's not really big and savvy on business or credit, let alone anything as far as financial literacy. Bar Financials itself, I am the credit specialist at Bar Financials, in which I'm also the owner of Bar Financials. That helps everyday consumers of debt repair and fixing their credit, in addition to those trying to build healthy credit, which is a case by case basis with which we help other consumers reach goals for building a strong stance to become savvy in business credit.
Great. And so let's talk a little bit first about individual credit. So a lot of what I'm seeing, I'm not sure if you're seeing this where you are, Kareem, but here in Philadelphia, where we've had an epicenter where there are a lot of people who have been affected by COVID-19, by the coronavirus, and where we definitely, have closed down businesses, I think around the middle of March.
Right.
We've seen, just in terms of personal lives, we've seen almost not quite a moratorium on rent, but where there has been a notice posted that there will be no evictions and there will be no filings for evictions before June 1st of this year. What that means a lot of the time is that people aren't paying the rent to their landlords. Potentially landlords can't pay mortgages if they haven't figured out a way to work with their lenders. But
Right.
People generally are not paying their bills. One, even if they have the ability to do so. The second thing is they may not have the ability to do so because they're not working. So when we talk about this in terms of credit, what are some things that maybe you've seen because of the pandemic, or maybe some tips you can give about how to kind of deal with how this may be affecting your credit?
As far as in regards to rent or mortgage, and the tip that can help you from negatively being impacted by the pandemic, it all comes down to creating a line of communication. That's what I would start with first, whether it be with your landlord, your actual bank, if you're actually paying a mortgage. A big mistake and what people is assuming that their landlord, lenders, or creditors know exactly what they're actually dealing with through this pandemic. Everybody is not being affected the same exact way, but everybody is being affected in regards to. So I would say just opening that line of communication, be honest, be transparent, don't be afraid to ask for help. You never know what could be done just by opening that line of communication. That's what I would start with.
Absolutely. We hear that a lot of the times too, that if we know that we're facing some type of financial hardship, it's better to get on the phone and talk to our lenders, our credit card companies, ahead of time. But people really don't want to have those conversations. It's difficult for them to do so. But I think you're right in terms of having those conversations. I know that, when we talk about like student loans, I know one of the things that's supposed to happen is that there was not supposed to be any student loan payments required for certain types of student loan backers, and that there would be no negative reporting to the credit agencies for 3 months, I believe that it was.
Right.
Yeah. Have you seen anything like that? Have any of your clients talked to you about that or have had concerns with that?
I haven't had a client have an issue with it yet because I think everybody's taking advantage of it for the most part, trying to be prompt because that is a big downfall of people that that's not really understanding how this can really affect your credit regardless of what's going on with the pandemic. You still have to open that line of communication. You still want to be able to have a clear understanding and give a clear understanding of exactly what's going on and how you are being affected by the pandemic. But just like everyone is going through the same exact thing all over the United States and parts of the world as well. So again, it all boils back down to opening that line of communication because you never know what options may be available to you, and you never know what may help or help you understand the situation as well as your creditor or lender.
Do you see any situations or any ways that people can take advantage of this time where maybe, lenders may be a little bit more relaxed or willing to be helpful in terms of even building up credit or repairing credit? Are there anything that people should be thinking about, reaching out to someone like yourself to say, let me use this time wisely to try to repair what I can?
Yeah, of course, it's always something you should or could be doing. I don't like to use the word should, but it's always an option that you can exhaust any remedy that can play it forward for you. I would say to the consumers and the listeners that would be a good idea if this step has already been exhausted. Sign up for a credit repair monitoring service that is descriptive of all 3 bureaus, or just contact the 3 bureaus directly and order your free credit report for the year, which you can obtain your credit report once a year for free from each bureau. The 3 bureaus directly, which this will help you identify and determine what steps need to be taken and in what order. You can contact either the lender or the bureaus directly, creating that line of communication once again. Ask them about the hardship options that may be available. I would do this ASAP if you're not already doing so. If you're not going to be able to pay on time, let alone the full amount, I would, again, open that line of communication and just be able to exhaust what remedies may be possible for you, available to you. And along with this, you asking the question yourself, you also may be able to help your family members, because a lot of people don't know just asking the question or asking for help can, eliminate any problem down the line.
Absolutely. In terms of talking about credit bureaus, you and I had a conversation before the interview some time ago, talking about where you should be looking in terms of reporting. So the 3 major credit bureaus that we're aware of are not the only places where there's reporting on your credit. Where are some of the other places we should be thinking about or we should know about when we're talking about our credit and how that may affect our ability to obtain financing in the future?
LexisNexis is one of the bigger bureaus that a lot of people don't speak about or even know about. It's an actual company owned by Equifax, and which is also a reason why it's good to be upstanding and transparent about when you're actually going to these other bureaus trying to create a understanding or open that line of communication. because what you think that they may not see, the three bureaus, which is Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, may not see are available to them. So you being honest and upfront about whatever's going on, it can help again in the long run. LexisNexis kind of is like a transcript. Say you're using a transcript from school to pretty much give you from the time you went to daycare or preschool or whatever to now. It's just like the same thing when it comes to LexisNexis in regards to credit, where it may have something as simple as a traffic ticket, a missed payment, could be child support, could be anything that reports to this one bureau, but you may not even see it on your other three bureaus just because LexisNexis is just kind of like the database for everything.
And that's definitely actually, LexisNexis, I'm familiar with that as being an attorney. That's something that we use for a lot of reasons, not just, for not in the way that you're describing it necessarily, but I know it from law school in terms of research. So if you're looking for judgments and things on people, that's a place people will look is LexisNexis because that would pull it up as well. Let's switch over and talk a little bit about business. So again, I own two main businesses. So I own a hair salon and I own a law firm. And so both of those I pay rent, to a landlord for. One is in a major building, and then the other one is a smaller building. But one of the things I did immediately was have conversations, especially with the hair salon. There's no way that we could remain open. You can't social distance and do hair.
Exactly.
So when we closed, I had conversations with the landlord, the utility companies and things like that to exactly what you said, find out my options. And just kind of, and everyone was really, really good. It was surprising like how many people even let us know like what they're willing to offer before I had even reached out. In terms of businesses, do you have any tips aside from kind of reaching out to lenders that businesses should be aware of in terms of protecting their business credit or just kind of how to make it through this time?
The biggest thing that I would stay away from right now as a business owner, which is my number one thing that I kind of keep in the forefront and the back of my mind, is not opening any new lines of credit. Because you don't know what is at stake right now. Mm-hmm. You're already in a position where you have everything that you invested into this company, and going out and consuming more debt is not promising. Because we don't know how long this is going to last, or when the economy itself is going to be able to bounce back from all of the hardship that has been through for the past couple of months right now.
And I agree with you. I think that was one of the things I looked at initially was, my line of credit for the law firm and, what I needed to do. The salon is basically fine. With the law firm, we're still open, right? So we're still, even though the courts are limited in terms of function, we're still able to do business. And so with the options for lending from the SBA, the PPP loans from the bank, or the economic injury disaster loan that was made available and then kind of taken away and then made available again and then kind of taken away. Those things, were definitely options that I explored. The PPP was an option that I explored. And I made decisions based on what I thought was best for my company, because I think the same way they're talking about, I'm looking at, well, when will the courts open? How long, for example, the PPP loan is supposed to last? It's 2 months, basically, of salary. And then, if I would have taken that when they first offered it, I'd be running out at the end of June, I think. And I don't know that things will be back to normal by then. And for me, it was weighing, whether or not I had enough work for my staff to do. And just what made the most sense. And I think you have to do that. For some people, it makes more sense. For some people, it doesn't make more sense for them to do it. And then the other option was whether or not the banks even had the funding for you to be able to take advantage of it. So I like what you say about being careful. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you this, Kareem, one of the conversations I had too, because I did a podcast episode on the SBA loans with Marissa Portuno, another lawyer who works with businesses. Okay. And one of the things we talked about was projections, financial projections for the next 6 months, for the next 3 months, the next 6 months, and the next year. Because if you take a line of credit now, and I'm not talking about the SBA loans, but you take a line of credit now, will you be able to pay it? Do you know what your income is going to look like in 3 months. I don't see a situation, even with the hair salon, with things going back to normal. I think I'm going to get hit with a rush as soon as we're allowed to do hair again, and then I think it's gonna fizzle a little bit.
Right.
What are your thoughts? I know that was probably a lot, but what are your thoughts on kind of weighing some of those things, even personal, with regard to your personal financial stability?
Another thing, as far as if your business or your personal financial stability, again, due to this dilemma as a business owner and the uncertainty, I would stay away from a new debt. That's what I said before, and just remain aware of the underlying issues of reopening a business, especially if you deal with customers directly. That can, away from the credit, that can be a hindrance to you being able to continue to grow long term, because there's so many things that the lobbyists are doing right now that's going against the Trump administration, the Congress, and it's pretty much to help the companies in America from a wide range of potential lawsuits, because you never know what type of what you opening your customers up to, due to we don't have a vaccine or anything yet. So as far as the financial and personal credit standpoint, it's kind of hard to kind of give a synopsis on what should be done, because that's one of the biggest issues that you have to worry about first and foremost before I even get into like the credit and for personal and business. I will keep that in the forefront of my mind as well.
Good. In terms of, let's say, in terms of using this downtime. So one of the things I've been doing a lot of, Kareem, is that I've been looking at, both of my businesses. I've been looking at a lot of the foundation, right? I've been looking at the processes and how they're working. I've been looking at a lot of reporting, a lot of things I didn't get a lot of time to do as consistently as I would like to, because I was working in and on the businesses, every day. Now I have time. So if I'm looking at taking this time and using it wisely to think about what I would like to see, maybe in a year or so, or be able to do in a year or so, maybe it is purchase a building, maybe it is, purchase something new for the salon, or maybe it is hiring another attorney for the law firm. What are some things that I can be doing right now if I wanted to just get myself in a good place to grow in a year or so from now?
Okay, the first thing I would like to identify as a consumer, speaking as a consumer, first thing I would want to identify is, why would I want to build credit? What am I trying to prepare myself for? Actually, is it, like you say, is it for equipment, or is it for new employees, or whatever it could be? It has to make sense in the beginning of everything. Then you would need to compare your existing status to the credit wheel, also known as the credit model. This would give you an understanding of creating a strategy that could be used as an advantage in building credit. Some advisors would tell you to obtain secured credit cards, stuff like that, of that nature, which is a great source of creating history on your report. This is very good for the consumers who are possibly building from scratch, or those who are trying to acquire new debt. Sometimes acquiring new debt while having fairly new accounts isn't always a good idea, depending on how old the account is. The desired lender may hold and use these new accounts against you. My advice to those that are in that situation is to allow the new accounts to show a report for at least 3 to 6 months good payment history.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what you can do is, write a consumer statement on your credit report. That could help you as well, allowing your current lender to see how you're being affected by the pandemic. Like I say, again, it's nothing new to everybody. Everybody's going through this. Everybody's being affected by it in some way.
So tell me a little bit more about writing a consumer statement.
A consumer statement is actually a statement about what your current standpoint is, whether it's you don't have a job, whether you do still have your job, and the time that you normally working is limited. It's pretty much just allowing your lender on your actual credit report to know exactly how you've been affected by whatever's going on. It doesn't always have to be a pandemic with such as what we're dealing with now. It could be anything. As long as you're being upfront, transparent, they have something to base everything off of, versus just putting derogatory accounts on your credit file. And it's something you could go to the actual bureau and like Credit Karma allows you to put a consumer report. TransUnion, Experian, Equifax does the same exact thing. So you could do it from either one of those outlets.
And how does that affect my credit score my credit score, I guess? So is that just something, just a note to a potential lender who would see that when they pull my credit?
Yeah, it pretty much plays a part into the hardship program that they have. It, as you say, it allows the actual consumer to be not debt free, but free of negative and derogatory accounts being added to your account for at least 120 days. I haven't seen anyone go over the 120 days until now because this is fairly new to everybody. So I don't think anyone has a clear, 120 days on their account of the pandemic. But this would help, allow people or the lender to know exactly what's going on and how they may be able to help you if they have to reach out themselves, or you may have to reach out and, further the conversation with whatever's going on with your situation.
And is this something that you can do ahead of time? I guess maybe not even ahead of time, I guess in the middle of it. So if our listeners are finding out about this now and they've been laid off since maybe March 15th, is that something that they can do now that could kind of go backwards and affect any negative reporting that may have happened like the last month or so? Or is it just kind of going forward?
It's pretty much something that you would have to do ahead of time if you have not been in hardship before and you haven't had any derogatory based upon the situation placed on your credit report. Mm-hmm. It's a good time to do it now. You don't want to wait till not everything, but anything is negative on your account and then try to dispute that or try to make it seem as if, I'm just now going through this hardship. They want to see you be proactive on what's going on.
So aside from getting my reports and mm-hmm. perhaps, making a consumer statement if necessary, what are some other things that I can do? If you kind of know, again, what my goals are, and I'm glad you said that, think about what your goals are. And I said this before in another episode of the podcast, that when we're meeting with our financial, our financial people, but like our CPAs, our accountants, our bookkeepers, our credit repair specialists, we should be talking about what the goals are, because that will, I think, change the way that we are supposed to be doing business, or the way that's the best for us to do business. And we won't get 1 or 2 years into doing it the wrong way and not able to achieve the goal that we want. So now that you've given us some tips on kind of how to make sure that we're reaching out to our lenders, to make sure that we're communicating with them, that we're checking our credit scores and probably checking them maybe a little bit more often now with the right tools, what are some things that we should be looking for when we're trying to find somebody like you, a credit repair specialist, to help us achieve the goals that we want to achieve in the future?
What I would look for myself, as I was a consumer before, I would look for testimony from actual customers versus just, the advertising, the marketing, and anyone can sell themselves and make it seem as such if they care about the actual individual. But a lot of times, as me being a customer, I've been, victim of people and fallen trapped to what I saw, what looked like it was, the go-to person or the go-to company. So I would look for, first and foremost, I would look for the testimonials of actual customers.
And for me, I know I'm highly skeptical of credit repair specialists, because what we're giving them really is all of our information to be able to steal our identity. So exactly. You're getting everything you need. I'm handing it to you. And not only that, I'm paying you. I'm giving you money to take it.
Exactly.
So you really want to be careful in choosing the right person. So, if I look at the testimonials, which I always try to look at, reviews, or hopefully they came from, I have a referral from somebody I know, someone I trust.
Right.
You and I got in contact through Carmina, somebody who I trust highly. How else should I be kind of vetting the person? Are there some red flags? Maybe I would notice that this person maybe doesn't know what they're doing, or maybe isn't on the up and up, completely. Is there anything else I should be looking out for?
First and foremost, it's kind of hard to differentiate who is who. So mm-hmm. I would try to obtain as much knowledge as I could myself on, the verbiage, what tools that most common practices and offices may use, and not really kind of put it out there in the forefront, but just allow the person to talk and see, how far the conversation goes and what may comes up and what kind of aligns with what you already have researched yourself. Because a lot of people just, like you say, they just are referred to that person and just want to give you their money. Like I have a lot of clients that do that, and I don't want to take a person's money just because it's that easy. I want to give them a clear understanding to allow them to make a sound decision because this is based upon their future. This is their identity. This is their their private information. And there's hard on money given. So I'm not the person that's going to take advantage of a person. So I would advise that.
So if I come to you with a negative 200 credit score and I tell you I want an 800 by December, you're not going to just tell me yes and...
Not at all. Not at all. Because first, there's no way you could possibly get a negative 200 credit score. I'm going to first educate you on that. And like I say, I really want to help. So it's not about the money at the end of the day. Of course, it helps the company thrive. But I have a conscience, and I don't want my conscience to be beaten up by, just taking someone's hard-earned money.
So I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to kind of discuss this because you and I both know how important credit is to our community in terms of being able to build wealth, in terms of being able to pass on generational wealth. And even, with our listeners who are business owners, entrepreneurs, it affects the opportunities that we have available, being able to take advantage of something that comes up maybe last minute and being prepared for that. So one of the things I know that we've talked about, again, prior to this conversation today, was the educational component that you have in your business. Can you talk about why education is so important before we jump into our 5 quick questions?
Education is very important in this industry because laws always change. You don't want to go into trying to help someone with old knowledge because you're gonna keep running into the same wall with no effects of obtaining good results. That's my biggest thing, in I went into a situation when I got into a trucking industry. I thought I had everything mapped out. I had the finances in place, but I didn't know the importance of healthy credit. I was having to get co-signers and people helping me out and putting stuff in their name, and it's my company. The company's actually in my name, and I have all my trucks and my trailers in someone else's name, and a lot of it came to bite me in the behind because when it came to getting insurance, nobody wanted to deal with me because I didn't understand. Just because I had the actual equipment, that wasn't it. It had to be actually in my name, and I couldn't do that because I didn't have the actual credit. I was able to obtain some things in my name, but my personal credit wasn't the way it needed to be. And then I had a fairly new company, so nobody wanted to lend to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they kind of putting a lot of money into an industry and I'm losing it. So I would say the first thing that I would try to do is, continue to educate myself on my personal standpoint of my credit before I actually indulge into opening a business, because at some point you're gonna have to, or it depends on what industry you are, but most of the time you're gonna have to rely on your personal credit to, leverage into getting a business startup or obtaining any type of loan for a business, period.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think you're right. And I think especially initially in the beginning, the business doesn't have any type of credit and it's really you. And then even later on, depending on the size of the purchase, you might still need a personal guarantee. And a lot of that is going to come from your personal credit. And then the other part is just understanding, what your options could be, and maybe forcing the hand of the lender or choosing a different lender because there are some other options available to you than just securing things with your own personal assets. But all that comes from education. Like you said, Kareem, it's understanding what it is. I think it's important, as a lawyer, we all know if you get in trouble for something right now, you can't say that I was ignorant of that law, that I didn't know that was something I could not do. Everyone, as complex as it is expected to know what the laws are and where they are. And I think that that's kind of the thing, the part about education. We have to take a personal responsibility to make sure we're educating ourselves about the things that we're expected to know or the things that affect us or could affect us.
Right.
And it's hard to know what you don't know, but you have to take that responsibility. And then people like yourself, business owners like yourself, do, I think, all their clients and customers, even potential clients and customers, a good deed. And then the community itself, when you take on the additional responsibility of educating people beyond just your services. So kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to wrap this real quick with our 5 quick questions that I like to ask every guest that's on the show. So the first question, Kareem, is what are you reading or which book are you listening to?
I'm actually reading Magic Johnson book. It's called 32 Ways to Be a Champion in Business.
Interesting. I hadn't heard about that one. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, it's a great book. It pretty much is a book that simplifies and stresses the importance of asking for help. It's just like we pretty much talked about the whole interview. Being honest with yourself and realizing that you may not have all the tools needed to accomplish the underlying goals of your own vision. And simply just asking help, whether it be directly or indirectly, building on a dream long term takes networking. And at times it is very humbling. So I got a lot of jewels out of that book, but those are the most things that stood out to me is asking for help and being humble in the process.
That's a good one. And I have to tell you, like lately, I've been obsessed with books that have been based on sports players because I can appreciate like how much work goes into them building their bodies, the amount of dedication it has that goes into it to compete at the highest levels, on a reoccurring basis. It takes a lot. So I would love to read that, read. And I was just watching The Last Dance this past Sunday and he was on there and he mentioned something similar to what you're saying now. So I can't wait. I'm going to probably download that as soon as we get off this call. It sounds good. What keeps you motivated?
That's a good question. Of course, I would love to say my son or either my mom, but that's not it. What drives me and keeps me with a tenacious attitude is the fact that I know my intentions are good and genuine. I want to help and keep helping them and help keep people informed as best as possible.
Awesome. I think that's a wonderful motivation. I think it's a genuine motivation. I think it's the best kind because the best customers, I think the best rewards come from knowing that you're actually helping people.
Right. Being able to relate.
Yeah. What do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
The importance of understanding and trusting the process.
Ooh.
Not only to help myself, but to help and influence others as well. Because everyone is in the know of what it actually takes to survive, yet alone be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I wish I'd known that back then. The understanding and trusting the process, rushing isn't always the key. It makes sense at the time, but sometimes it's gonna come back and bite you.
It's funny, like I'm in Philly, well outside of Philly, so all we talk about is trust the process when it comes to the Sixers, and we're still trusting, holding on, yet and still. But I think that's, that the process part, there's a lot of things that people tell us to do, before we start businesses. You should write a plan, you should save money, you should blah, blah, blah. The things that we kind of get tired of hearing. And sometimes you'll hear people say, you don't need that. You don't need those things to get started. And no, you don't need them. But there's a reason why people tell you should have 6 months or a year's worth of savings before you start a business, because if you don't, you make yourself much more susceptible to failure when you don't do the things you're supposed to do. So there's a reason, there's a process for things. Yeah. And then the other part, like you said, it's a learning. It can't all be fast. It has to come through the actual working through the process. The growth comes through the growing pains.
Right.
Yeah. One that I'm pulling back into my 5 questions that I kind of took off for a while. And I don't know how I fell off from asking that. And I switched it with something else. Is how do you get better at your craft? So how do you get better at being Kareem, the credit specialist?
Oh, wow. How do I stay in the know? I mean, this is my craft, and I give and offer my service based on what I know. So I must continue to educate myself on the old and the new, and leverage my mistakes with a profound way of doing the right thing. I know I can't give a testimony on what's right or wrong without having my own testimony. So anyone can learn from something But without your own testimony, there's not a lot of passion in relaying a message unless it's your own. So in my opinion, well, of course, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's absolutely it. I think that's a very good point to make. It hits different when you know what you're talking about, when you've been through it and you understand it.
Right.
You talk about it at a different level. And with one, I think that resonates a lot better with your clients, your consumers. This is the growth goal. So I always ask our guests to give us one growth tip that you can give to our listeners that they can act on sooner than later.
What I would give to anybody is be adaptable. You must be able to adapt and to adjust quickly in any realm of life. Keeping an open mind would allow you to test the waters to new ideas. You'll be surprised by the stories I've heard from successful and unsuccessful people about the things they wish they would have done versus the latter. I am a big victim of my own mess. So that is something that I would say: be adaptable, keep an open mind to what's going on.
I think that's good. I think that's excellent advice dealing with this right now on May 5th in the middle of a quarantine for most of our country, because that's what it is. It's required all of us as business owners, as parents, as consumers, even to adapt very quickly to a new, not, semi-normal state of life. It's required a lot of us and it's highly emotional at times. It's stressful at times. There's a lot of things that, we're dealing with and weighing as parents, as partners, as business owners. So being adaptable is probably like the best advice you can give somebody right now, period, to know how to kind of continue to get through. So Kareem, thank you so much for being a guest on the Growth Goal podcast. It was great sharing this time with you today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to our listeners, I hope you found this very special pop-up episode of the Growth Goal podcast helpful. Kareem, can you tell our listeners how to get in contact with you?
Of course. You can find me on Facebook at We Love to Raise the Bar, IG and Twitter at Bar Financials, and the website barfinancials.com with an S.
All right. And we'll make sure we link to those things in the show notes. So you'll be able to find Kareem very quickly. And to our listeners, make sure that if you enjoyed this interview, please go on and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. It helps us to be found by other people like yourself. And as always, if there's a certain type of guest that you would like us to have on, a topic that you would like me to cover, please send me an email at Alicia, ALYCIA, @thegrowthgoal.com. This podcast is for you. So I want to make sure that you're getting all the tools you need in your toolbox to help your business grow to the next level. Until next time, take care.
You've been listening to the Growth Goal Podcast. Join us again for more growth tips.